tabletop role-playing game news year in review for one last time this year. Until next week, we're going to open up our charts, take out our sextant, and take a look at all the tabletop role-playing game news stories that are going to affect the next week, plus going all the way back to this time last year, our predictions for 2024, the biggest news story, and then the biggest news story that didn't involve Wizards of the Coast, but I have to answer a text from my mom first, so everybody say hi to my mom. There we go. That in the shower. There we go. Text out. All right, so the number one story for 2024 was the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons / the tabletop role-playing game hobby as a whole. The carriers, the torchbearers of the tabletop role-playing game industry, Wizards of the Coast, celebrated the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons with nothing. I mean, technically, you could say the early history of D&D book that they came out with that was filled with all that horrible nonsense was a 50th anniversary adjacent, but really you could have released that at any point in time. There wasn't anything specifically 50th anniversary about it. It was just more like, hey, this is what we think happened in the beginning based upon the stuff we've had. And by the way, we're also going to fill it with a bunch of lies. Yeah. Now, for the 50th anniversary of anything, 40th, 30th, 20th, you want a thing, something to acknowledge that it's the 50th anniversary. And the most logical thing is clothing or stickers or something that appeals to anybody, whether it be a hardcore fan of your product line, a casual observer of your product line, somebody who just wants to be cool and take advantage of the fact that everybody else is wearing it. When people walk through the door at theme park and go to the gift shop, you're either going to have the people who are always going to buy something because they're just diehard fans, or just, hey, I'm here, I might as well, right? So anything that acknowledges the anniversary would make the most sense from a business point of view. Plus, the mass production of any of these widgets, relatively cheap, and the more you produce, the less it costs, till eventually the product pays for itself. You're spending nothing to get the t-shirt out there, really, and you're going to make back 100 times more than you spent to have a bunch of guys in someplace, some gnomes or whatever who makes these things, print out your boxes and boxes of things. So you would think at the start of the year, knowing also that 2024 was the Chinese Zodiac Year of the Dragon, that it would be a perfect combination. We've got the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons. Dragon is in the name. We've got the Chinese Zodiac New Year of the Dragon. Combine the two, Year of the Dragon, Dungeons and Dragons 50th anniversary, and then put it on a t-shirt. Everybody and their dog, no matter how closely or far away they are from Dungeons and Dragons, would probably have bought that t-shirt. I don't know what that sentence means, everybody and their dog. I love it, but I don't know what it means. But yeah, it would have sold. It would have sold like hotcakes. It would have been the biggest Wizards of the Coast D&D product sales of the year. It would have outsold the Player's Handbook. It would have outsold any other piece of merch that they made. Did they give us a 50th anniversary Year of the Dragon t-shirt officially made by Wizards of the Coast? No. No, they did not. Did they give us an official 50th anniversary made by Wizards of the Coast? You could find it on D&D Beyond. Anything. No, they gave us Dungeons and Dragons 6th edition. They gave us a book about dragons and a couple other things. They gave us a whole bunch of insulting, condescending, utterly stupid articles and stuff like that. And then they gave us here's the history thingy, but it's completely untrue. But in regards to this is official 50th anniversary merchandise, no. They let some other people do it, but no. In fact, other than the games and the game adjacent stuff, the only official Hasbro products that came out that were connected in any way, shape, or form to their franchises were Magic the Gathering Hot Pockets and Dungeons and Dragons Meat Sticks and Dungeons and Dragons Beard Oil. Everything else was sublet. Now, in Wizards of the Coast's defense, they did say that they do not believe Dungeons and Dragons makes them any money anymore. Sorry, Wizards of the Coast shills. That's Chris Cox. That's not me. And the only way Dungeons and Dragons, Power Rangers, Transformers, all the other IPs they own will continue to make them money is if they license off the IP to third-party productions, which leaves us with the actual stuff we got in 2024 for the anniversary. So this is just a general Microsoft Bing Dungeons and Dragons 50th anniversary merchandise search. We go shopping and we're going to get this. Now, none of these are officially from Wizards of the Coast. They are all Wizards of the Coast adjacent or Wizards of the Coast adjacent. Like this, the Dungeons and Dragons 50th anniversary Icons in the Realms figures, which looked amazing. That's WizKids. So that's Dungeons and Dragons adjacent. But like this t-shirt, that's Dungeons and Dragons adjacent. Some company that it's bought the license from some company that bought it from Wizards. So, and you know, I mean, how Dungeons and Dragons is this t-shirt? I mean, it's, well, you can't see because it's, yeah, but whatever. It's a dragon. I could say that's the official Dungeons and Dragons 50th anniversary dragon, but I mean, it's not. It's a generic looking dragon in the D20 shape. It's enough that you could go, yeah, it's D&D, and Wizards can go, yeah, we'll take our percentage, but it's yeah, no. So this is pretty much what we got. Fourth party production companies like this guy, Print Vale, who had vaguely connected D&D type stuff. And we had like this, Bed Bath & Beyond even had stuff, and the coasters and the hats and this nightmare plushie of Moloch. And what was this? This was the metal coaster and dice and this weird metal box cover coin, which is worth nothing because it's lead. You know, these are all third-party things. None of them are specifically, well, actually, those two are specifically 50th, but for the most part, there's nothing about these that screams 50th anniversary. There's nothing that stands out and says, here's Wizards of the Coast, acknowledging that for 50 years, this game has existed, and we want to celebrate and embrace its long history. And you would think, again, t-shirt, frickin' t-shirt. But no. So that's probably the number one story, right, of 2024. It didn't have anything to do with controversy other than Wizards of the Coast and inability to give us a t-shirt. Now, the number two story, of course, would have been the AI nonsense that every company did. The licensing, the release of Dungeons and Dragons 6th edition. So this is from ICV2. This is by Scott Thorne. It was written this morning. And it's his predictions versus what actually happened. So predictor number one, D&D at 50 licensing. Did D&D license enough stuff for 50th? No, they did not. He said he called out that it was going to be big, and turns out it wasn't, and we just talked about D&D 1 or D&D 6th edition coming out with the Player's Handbook just in time for the 50th anniversary. Yes, that was true. And according to Wizards of the Coast, it's the fastest selling D&D product of all time, as long as you don't count Tasha's. And all time being 2014 till now, because Wizards of the Coast doesn't count anything before 2014. And the only reason why it was the fastest one of all time was because of Gen Con, where they had 300 copies available, or 3,000 copies. I forget. It was a large number of copies available 2 weeks before 3 weeks, almost a month before street date, most of which Stephen Glicker bought. But those count for the algorithm. Look how many sold as of day one, because we take the math of all the ones we sold before day one and put it in. But as far as the computer is concerned, these all sold on day one. So it's the fastest selling product we ever had. So yeah, they came out with the Player's Handbook. They came out with the DM's Guide. They've delayed the Monster Manual to next year. The Player's Handbook was lambasted. I mean, even actual 5e fans were looking at it going, oh, God. There are a few people who have said positive things about them. Very few people who weren't D&D shills, like Jeannie, has said anything really good about it. So, I don't know. It's still in its infant phases, so let's give it another couple months. But the art, we know, oh, God. Yeah. The jury's still out on the final for D&D 6e Player's Handbook. The D&D Dungeon 6e Dungeon Master's Guide, on the other hand, got generally favorable reviews in that, yeah, it exists, and it's not awful. They took everything that people didn't like in the D&D 5e Dungeon Master's Guide, and they took it out. The sections that are actually D&D Dungeon Master's material apparently are decent. It is the perfect Dungeon Master's Guide for 5e/6e if you don't already have one. And even if you do, you maybe might want to at least take a look at it, because some of the stuff is better. There's also stuff in it that is outright just, why do we need 3,000 pages on safety tools? So, yeah. Magic the Gathering and Pokemon, yeah, made money this year. It was, Wizards of the Coast's top producer other than Peppa and Furby. I still do not understand the Furby, and nobody can offer me an explanation. So yeah, and then all the other stuff. Then we got the AI. That's probably the biggest thing, the AI art thing, right? That was probably the biggest story. So we knew the AI was existing. We knew we were seeing AI on stuff. The problem was, when the AI controversy began, people said, oh, we stand with the artists. We're not going to use AI. We're not going to use NFTs. We're not going to use any of that computer, artificial intelligence, cyber currency, magical mumbo jumbo that the OGGM doesn't understand, right? No, we're not. And Kate Butt, starting with the top of the hill, shortly after making these blanket statements, Wizards and several others, but Wizards got caught with their pants down. And people went, but that right there is AI. You can tell. In fact, I'll run it through. Oh, yeah, it is AI. And Wizards of the Coast, instead of, oh, yeah, they're like, oh, I don't know how that got there. Literally, I don't know how that got there. We have a guy whose job it was to make sure AI didn't make it, and I guess he wasn't there that day. We're sorry. We'll re-release it without the AI art. So they re-released the stuff without the AI art on D&D Beyond. Isn't that nice that they can just go into your product and change it without you knowing it, as long as it's on D&D Beyond? And then they're like, okay, that's it. It's never going to happen again. And just as the last bit of that never is going to happen again sentence left their mouths, it happened again. And then again, they went, oh, I don't know how that got there. We must have missed that one. He told us it was an AI art. And the guy was like, yeah, I did tell you. No, you never told us. No, I told you it was. Remember, this actually happened, where they said the guy never told them it was AI art. And the artist went, yeah, I did. And they said, no, you didn't. And the artist went, look, I can show you where I said, and you printed it knowing it was AI art. So finally, the third time getting caught, they were like, you know what? Fuck it. Remember at the beginning of the year where we said we weren't going to use AI art? We're using it. Deal with it. In fact, not only are we going to use AI to do the art, we're going to use AI to do everything. Let's fire a couple thousand people. Now, we're not firing anybody useless like Mackenzie or Todd or Crawford or Kyle. No, we're firing people who actually do work and replacing them with AI, because not only are we going to use AI to do the art, we're going to use AI to do everything. In fact, if we've made a product or have access to a product, or you've sent us a product at any point in time, it's ours. All those things you put on D&D Beyond, that's ours. You shouldn't have read the fine print. Everything you've ever submitted to us for a contest or whatever, ours. And every product that was ever made that we have in the Wizards of the Coast Dungeons and Dragons TSR warehouse, ours. And we're going to let the AI go through those and make new stuff. So any new adventures that are coming out are just going to be old stuff, regurgitated, mashed together, and printed out by the AI. Few, if any, human hands are going to be associated with it. And yeah, we're going to use AI art, and we've been using AI art, and there's going to be AI art in our product in the future. And if you don't like it, suck it. And several other companies followed, where they began the year saying, oh, we're not going to use AI art. We're not going to do NFTs. We're not going to do any of that science-y magic computer mumbo jumbo. And then, much like Wizards of the Coast, they got caught with their pants down. Turns out you were using AI. Turns out you were making NFTs. Turns out you were using ChatGPT. And some of them fessed up. Some of them are still like, no. Some of them are like, look, we can't fight fate. We're going to use AI, whether you guys like it or not. We're sorry. We just, it's just what it is. It's the future. Hold on for the ride. So, but sadly, Wizards of the Coast was the number one problem maker. I mean, there were other things that happened in tabletop role-playing game news, some great, some not so great, some awful, some not so awful, but generally it was Wizards of the Coast set the pace, and every other game company had the choice to fall in line or try and fight upstream. Now, I will say, despite others trying to make you feel otherwise, it was an amazing year for the OSR, for the OGL, for third party, starting with, of course, Kelsey Dion Shadowdark, tabletop role-playing game of the year, product of the year, writing of the year, everything Kelsey was nominated for, she won because she did the work, and she got a lot of haters for it, but she did the work, and she has set the stage for what we can expect in the future. Not only did she basically open up the $1 Million Club to small press publishers like herself, but she showed us that a well-crafted non-D&D D20 game can be successful and continue to be successful. Will it succeed as over D&D 6e? Well, it's not a high bar, unfortunately, but I don't know. It's still mentioned. So, yeah. Now, personally, my year in review, I will talk about in a separate vlog, but I think generally role-playing game-wise, I had a pretty decent year in review, right? All in all, 2024 was not as bad as 2023, gaming-wise. We had a lot of success stories. We had a lot of positive things come out of the Wizards of the Coast nonsense. We have a lot of individuals stepping up and saying, I can do this, including yours truly. So, yeah. In the regards to, personal attacks against myself, this year I got the best insult I ever received, being called an ungodly heathen. That one was that. Yeah, no one's going to top that one. So that's my year in review, stories in review. Generally, when we weren't talking about Wizards of the Coast, there were weeks where we weren't really talking about anything. In fact, I had to set aside a whole entire day just to talk about Wizards of the Coast news, because I didn't want Mondays to always be about Wizards of the Coast, which meant my stories on Mondays were often like 2 minutes long. What was your number one story for tabletop role-playing game news? What's your best tabletop role-playing game personal moment for 2024? Feel free to share down below. We will be back next Monday with a whole new year of shenanigans. Until then, have a great day and I'll see you soon.